Doing all right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Cosmic Compass Conversations this morning. It's good to see all of you. Just scroll through and see all your faces. Yay. Before I introduce our guest, we'll do our tarot card pull. We'll do some breathing. And for those of you that were with me on Saturday with Jenna and me in our workshop, wow, what a day of tarot and a little bit of tea, right? So a little bit of tea and a lot of cards. So I want to just say thank you to all of you. That was really an amazing day. And yeah, so thank you. All right, so before we begin, and as I'm shuffling the cards, let's take some breaths together and just create a really solid container. So just find your way here. You don't have to close your eyes, but if you want to close your eyes, you can, or you just bring your awareness inward. And if you are sitting, you can just feel your feet on the ground. If you're standing, you can feel your feet on the ground too. And just find your way to bringing awareness all the way down your body, down your legs, to your feet, and feeling the earth supporting you. Feeling that beautiful support of the earth. And as we breathe in today, breathing in up through the soles of the feet, expanding the belly, and exhaling. Just feeling that support of the earth, the deepening, breathing in up through the soles of the feet, expanding the belly. On your exhale, if it feels comfortable to relax your jaw and your shoulders, you can wiggle around a little bit if you need to, opening your body up. For some of you, it's evening, so you'll be wanting to relax. We'll take another breath in up through the soles of the feet, expanding the belly, and exhaling when you're ready. One more breath in and really feeling the support of all those in all the realms that are here for our greatest good. Breathing in their support and exhaling when you're ready. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. All right, so this is exciting. I'm so happy. All right, I'm going to pull 3 cards. We'll just stick with 3 cards today. After Saturday, we have plenty of cards, so we'll just do 3 cards for the week. And these again are for the collective, but if they speak to you, which I hope they do, remember, just tune into what do you feel, what do you sense, what do you see? I'm cheating, I'm looking at the card. Okay, let me get that up here. And the first card, and again, there's no need to know the meaning. You just go with what you're feeling. You can look up the meaning later. And then in the email, I'll put the affirmation from Chris Ann. This is the Light Seers Tarot deck. So again, lots and lots in that card. And hopefully you can see some of the sacred geometry that's showing up there. Beautiful card. And again, it's more like, how do you feel when you see this card? I mean, it does have a really, as we've discussed a lot, it has a lot of meanings. There are some that are definitely deeply traditional, and there are some that are have evolved over time. So just like everything, we don't want to toss out what was, but we also want to evolve into what can be better or more appropriate for now. All right, so next card. No cheating. I will just put it on up there. I won't look at it first, but I love being able to see it up here on the screen. And just, again, we've seen this card a number of times. If something's just kind of calls to you, even one element of the card or one illustration, Chris Ann does such a great job, as we've discussed, with really getting the elements of each card. I'm noticing something I've never noticed before. So again, you can look at these 100 times or more. And just, what do you sense? What do you feel? And again, as a collective, starting with the World card and then moving into the Page of Cups. And for those of you that might be new to this, the cups is the water element, which some of us have seen quite a lot of lately, but also emotions, feelings. And the world is kind of what it says it is. That one's pretty straightforward. But there's a lot embedded in there. There's a lot of other meanings in there as well. All right. And then the third card, and I'm noticing something I've never noticed before with this card too. This is really interesting. I love that, with new eyes, right? Just really deepening into this card. It's actually a really good card for today. Really good card for today. And I say that partly because I know the meaning, but I also think there's a lot of elements of this card that's true for this time of year anyway, for sure. And I think with our conversation today, I think also very true. And if anybody wants a hint, I'm going to share, because I do think it is important to kind of set my segue, right? I will share Chris Ann's affirmation, okay? Because it's perfect. I give myself permission to slow down and heal. And give myself permission to slow down and heal. So there's more to that card, of course. And again, I saw some new things. I'm even seeing new things right now. It's amazing. It's amazing how the cards speak, right? The images, and there's also a feeling, there's that just deepening into whatever is surfacing for me. All right. So before I bring on our guest, I want to give you all a beautiful image to look at. It's another beautiful image. This is Mary Connaughty-Sullivan's book, Nudges from the Other Side, True Stories of Afterlife Communication. This is one of my favorite topics. So, before I spotlight Mary, I just want to say I really appreciate Mary for coming on today. And I met Mary through Kathy Woods, who was one of the other presenters at the Journey On Summit. Kathy and Mary have been friends, I think, quite a long time, which we can get into. And Kathy, who is a yoga teacher, for those of you who don't know that, but more than a yoga teacher, she is an instructor of living life at a very deep level. And she knew immediately that Mary and I would have a connection. And so I'm gonna spotlight you, Mary, and I'm gonna start our introduction. There you are. Thank you for joining me. Mary, what we're going to talk about today is a really tender subject for a lot of people, and it's also very joyful on the other side of this. So there's both. And I read Mary's book. I really recommend it. And I'm just going to say, by way of introduction, and I'll let you share more about you and your journey as we move through the conversation. But I wanted to tell you all that my experience of reading the book was wonderful. Mary, I'm very sorry that your son, Aaron, left this plane of existence in 2010. way too young, right? 20 years old. And a lot of people in our community have lost children, whether it's their own children or friends of their children, way too young. And so this is a tender topic, and yet the working through it, and here's what I love so much about the book, is we follow Mary's journey. We get to follow your journey, Mary, through your grief, but also through a deeper understanding of how these realms are just side by side in a lot of ways, and that we're enveloped with the possibility of being able to stay connected after death. And Mary, so one of the questions I am often receiving is, how can I communicate, right? How can I communicate with my beloved after they pass? And I have one, I have the gifts that I have. So I am able to see and hear through the other side. And so that's something that happened to me very, very young. And for others, that may not be how it's done. There's so many beautiful ways of communication. And that's what I love about Mary's book the most, is that story after story after story, we get to hear, see, sense, feel how beloveds are communicating through the veil. And it's very powerful. And I'm just so grateful to have you here. And all right, so now enough of me. Let's bring you on, Mary, and welcome. And I'm just going to let you share what you would like to share right off, whatever is coming up, and then we'll get into our conversation.
All right. Well, thanks. And I never know really the way that these conversations are going to go. And what I will share with you and listeners is that I very rarely get taken off my feet nowadays. And what I mean by that is that, grief is a really tricky thing. It's very deep. And yet, over the last almost 14 years, I've kind of learned how to be a knight with, my mail on and my sword and my shield. And so it's very rare that someone can sort of knock me off balance. But of course, it happened today. And it hasn't happened at any other podcast.
Oh, dear. Okay.
No, so this is a good thing. So
Okay.
I'm like really in tune with where this is going. Not that I wasn't in tune with any of the others, I was, but it felt more like just, a deep, nice connection, and I could say what I needed to say. But this is, really getting me on an emotional level. So I will begin with the cards. I really know very little about tarot. I've had one other reading, and it was late last year, and the book was just about to launch. And I walked in, I had done it for a date night with my wonderful husband. And we walked in, and this woman just blew my mind. She's like, you're getting ready to put something out into the world, and it's going to make a huge difference to people. And I was like, okay, right. And so I was just like, oh my God, you knew that. Right. And there was Aaron. To me, that was Aaron when you showed that. And in addition, the dog with the wings. All right, see if I can do this. This right here. I have tears in my eyes right now. That is Aaron's dog, Sam. And this year, our Sammy is going to be 17 years old. And we don't even know how she's still alive.
Wow.
And she's getting ready for her wings, I think.
Yeah.
So there was that beautiful card.
Yeah.
And then the nest, what I saw as a nest. And I feel like almost the beginning of this journey, this unwanted, unimaginably difficult, unexpected journey, even though it's been really, really hard, I've been in a nest, and there's been that scarlet thread to Aaron's heart and
Wow.
to the other side. And that began almost immediately for me. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't know anything about it, but it began happening. Thank God I recognized it and wrote it all down, because I wouldn't have believed it and I would have remembered it if I didn't do that. So that was really what came up right off the bat today.
It happens almost every time, and it's always awe-inspiring. So thank you for sharing. Just thank you for sharing, because we're on this journey together, and as a group, as a community, we're here for learning and exploring and deepening. And the topic is, as I said, it's very tender. And as you said, it's not an experience that's ever, ever wanted, ever. Losing a child is not something that I have personally had the experience of in this lifetime. But I know, and I, again, reading your book and then talking to others who have lost their children over the years, it is an experience that I think you continue moving through. I don't think it is something that ever comes to an end. And you have created something for all of us. I mean, and even if you haven't lost a child, this book goes into other deaths and other people's experiences, and Mary's support of those people. And I'm so deeply appreciative of this. So, Mary, what else would you like to share by way of introduction to your experience, or do you want to just drop into questions that I already have a million of?
Well, one thing that I usually like to mention right off the bat is, for your listeners, is I have this little neurological condition that affects my voice. And so, although I did begin by telling you this really has made me feel, the waterworks coming on, and that's very unusual. I'm usually, sort of like marching through and actually even having a good time in life. But, this is really tender, and the cards and just the environment, the breathing. But anyway, the glitchy voice, that's me. That is every time I open my mouth. It's not a function of being nervous or emotional or anything like that. So, for your listeners, what I'm told is people get used to the cadence of it, and then they're like, I don't even hear it anymore. I do, but people tell me they don't. So I just want to put that out there.
I appreciate that. And you're right, I do get used to it. I think I've already used to it. So, but I do appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, so thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing your full self and bringing your vulnerable self. Um, Clearly, we're getting nudges from the other side already through the cards. So, what would you like to emphasize first off about the journey that you're on, or the book, or the writing of the book? Where would you like to start?
Really that, number one, I do hope this doesn't happen to anyone else. But having said that, I believe we all will live through a grief that is very deep and very meaningful. It would be unnatural to live our lives and never lose anyone that we loved so deeply.
Mhm.
And I think, for me, I let the journey define itself.
Yes.
And I just sort of felt like, Alice in a really bad Wonderland, that I fell through a hole and there was no bottom. And I just kept falling in the beginning.
Mhm.
And, people all around me said, you need to do this, you need to do that, go to Kindermorn, you need to see a psychologist, you need, to the point where I was like, you know what I need is not to hear anybody's voice anymore.
Mhm.
And because I didn't want to do all that. I didn't know what I did want to do, but I knew I very deeply didn't want that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to join groups. I didn't want to talk to people. I just needed to be with me. And I knew from a very short arm's length distance that my dear husband was really watching me. And he was letting the line go out. And I knew he was ready to reel it back in if I did do anything really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest stuff that I did basically was I had my places where grief would just tumble out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in my office when I was alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the barn when I was shoveling shit. Because literally that's what I was doing in life anyway. Shoveling shit. And it was all around me. And I couldn't get away from it. But one of the first things that I noticed is I was literally infecting everyone in my orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy, the dog, Aaron's dog, who thankfully didn't get in the car with him that day, for whatever reason, he was alone and he didn't hurt anyone else, which I was always grateful for. And Sammy went up with a lesion on her nose that just erupted. One of the horses had an upper respiratory infection that just, came on for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned this in the book. One of our cats became so ill that we ultimately had to euthanize him. And like I'm just operating in my own orbit, I don't even notice stuff. And so I was just operating like at such this vibration that everyone around me was getting sick. And finally I noticed that. And finally somebody said something to me that did resonate. And it was a business acquaintance. And, I worked in financial services. People in financial services want you to work all the time.
Yes.
But this executive that was my internal client called me one day and he said, "How are you doing, kid?" He always called me kid, even though he's only a few years older than me. And I just, I said, "This is really rough." And somewhere in that inner well that I think we all possess, whether you're a brainiac and you're living in financial services, there's just that deep connection that everyone has. And he said, you just do what you want to do. If you want to work, work. If you don't feel like working, don't work. Just do what you want to do when you want to do it for as long as you need to do it.
Yes.
And for some reason, coming from that individual, that was very freeing to me.
Yes.
And I remember glancing over at my bookshelf, and there was an empty journal sitting there. I'm going to grab it right now.
Oh, good.
And it was sitting there. It had nothing in it. And I thought, you know what? Sorry about that. That's my other dog. I said, I'm just going to start writing in this journal. And about 5 days after Aaron passed, we had a funeral, and the most unexpected things began happening. And I thought, I should write that down in this journal about the way I'm feeling. I should write all these little things down. And then I began collecting the words of other people, like super inspiring things that I read or that just flew into my universe. And I wrote it all down. And then I ran out of room in that one. And I picked up another one that someone had sent me at the very beginning of the grief journey. And so today, I now write at the end of my memoir online. I'm not writing by hand anymore, which is a good thing because as I wrote out my narrative just around these journal entries last year, sometimes I was like, what did I even write? Like, what is that? who do I attribute that to? And so I made my work more difficult, but I'm still collecting stories to this very day, the latest and greatest of which happened a few minutes ago when we opened up this podcast.
This is a beautiful, beautiful space in which to receive more of those nudges and more of those signs. And it really touches me. It really touches me that this group, this community, and all those that are listening later, they're all a part of this with you, with us. And Mary, when I read the book and I just, there's so much to talk about. But one of the things I wanted to just say right off is, you quote Rosemary Altia's book, The Eagle and the Rose. Um, if anyone out there has not read The Eagle and the Rose, I love it's Rosemary Altea and Altea. When I started working with my psychic mentors back a long time ago, it's been about 40 years now, for the very first woman that I worked with. And a lot of our community knows this, but I'll share it again. She was very definitely a medium. And, I went through a lot of training with her, and she recommended Rosemary's book. Now, I don't think it was 40 years ago because I don't actually know the actual copyright date on that book. But whenever that book came out, that was one of the major recommendations because it was written in such a way, again, and I feel like Mary, you really captured this as well. We don't have to be psychic to connect with the other side or listen for see the signs from the other side. This morning being an example of that, right? So that was, I mean, there's so much more to say, but that's what I love the most about this book is that it's for everyone. And, when you talk about wanting to be able to reach people in the world, that's what this book can do because there's quotes from everything. You bring it all together and your reflections and your stories, and then the stories of other people. Would you like to share a story from one of the first times that you felt or knew that Aaron was sending you signs?
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. And I'll back up for only a minute and say, Rosemary and the McCormicks, which I quote extensively in the
Yes.
book,
Yes.
immediately gave me permission to do so. And
Yes.
I guess, in the long run, why wouldn't you? It's more exposure for your
Yeah.
own work and whatever.
Yes.
But I was just really grateful that they were just right away like, absolutely, you can do that. All the rest of it, I operate under fair use because they're littler snippets. And
Right. Right.
the hero's journey, she gave me permission right
Right.
away as well. And, for me, along the writing of the book, when those doors would open, it just felt like, yep, I'm on the right path.
Right.
And I feel like all the way through the writing journey, my heart and my hands were open. And so if there was a door that closed, then my hand went, all right, bye. But when it remained open, we brought it in. And I guess I say we, I didn't intend to say that. But, at the end of the book, I do credit my co-author, Aaron.
Yes.
And, he was with me every step of the way on the journey. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Before you get to your first story, I want to share something about, I can't find my copy, but one of the books that I most often recommend for, especially for horse people, is Horses in the Mystical Path, by the McCormicks. And so, yes, I saw that and I got very excited because I was like, wow, there's someone else who knows about this book. And so, yes, and actually, I will say, Mary does have a lovely list of books at the back. She also has included videos, movies, and music, by the way. I love that. And I think we all, I think this is one of the things that is so helpful is it's giving us permission to create our own resource list too. So we can start with Mary's, and then there's other ways that we can connect with information, but also with feeling, and sometimes like I was looking at the music, of course, because music evokes feeling. And I love that. And again, these are places where you've taken some, some quotes or had a reason to share about it. But I just, music is such a powerful way to evoke emotion. And so you would, and we will get to the stories, don't worry, but you would mention something about privately being in your office and being able to like let down there. For a lot of us, they're finding those private spaces is really key, and music and movies can be very supportive in order to dive deeper into the, like you said, there's just so much that's in there that wants to move. It needs to move. And I guess one other thing I wanted to share, and then we're going to the stories. When I had a significant death, and a lot of us at least by my age, we've had a few. And so you've been connected to quite a few actually. And so we'll talk more about that. But the best piece of advice I got was very similar to what you received. It was very straightforward. Do everything you feel compelled to do, or don't. And it's very similar, like, oh, I can do that. I have permission. So I'm really grateful to the person in your life that gave you permission to follow this journey. Okay, so now back to your stories about Aaron, and maybe whichever one you want to share or more, you can share as many as you want.
Yes. Well, and here I go again, taking one minor step back.
Okay.
The guy that said that is on the back of the book. And
Oh, okay.
he is the only one that I use a quote from on the back of the book. And when I asked him about it, he's like on MSNBC every week talking about the market. I'm talking, this is not like his.
Got it.
But once again, that door was just wide open. And he said, I would love to do that. And thank you for including me. And, that just means the world to me, because that really was just an important piece of the journey. It
Yes.
opened a path.
Yes.
But yes, so a story. I'll share the very first one. And we had to wait 5 days for Aaron's funeral because Aaron's dad was in Iraq working as a civilian contractor. And this was, after the Gulf War and all that business. And so it takes a while to get home from a war zone. And so we waited. And I don't remember much about those days other than it was like hell on earth. Just there's nothing to do, and you want to do everything, but there's nothing to do. That person is gone. You can't do anything.
Right.
And so after the funeral, which was early in June, and back in 2010, we never saw dragonflies until summer was really full on, even in North Carolina. We see them now a lot more, and I even write about that in the book. There's an entry towards the back. But back then we didn't. And I wasn't thinking really about dragonflies, but when we got home from the funeral, I remember looking up, and on the antenna of our vehicle was just this beautiful dragonfly. And I hit Dan's arm and I said, look, like, when does a dragonfly show up on your antenna when you barely stopped moving? And I said, I kind of feel like that's our symbol for Aaron. And then I would begin seeing them in the most improbable places. They would land on me. And there's even a story in the book about when I was at Equinaction a couple months later, where they were landing on me. And Yeah.
I love that. Well, and for all those who, I think probably most people know that dragonfly is one of the symbols around transformation and moving into the mystical realms. So there is that beautiful connection already. And the reason dragonfly is one of them is because, very similar to the butterfly, it goes through a process of literally transforming from one world to the next world.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. Did you know that when you saw the dragonfly for the first time? Did you know the mystical
I
aspect?
did not. I did not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that. I think a lot of people here have lost someone close to them, and some it's been very recent. Having, I'll hear a lot of this. People will say, "Well, am I crazy that I'm seeing this or I feel this?" I'm sure you hear the same thing in your world. People will ask, well, is it possible that I'm reading too much into this? That's what people will ask me. What do you think
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah. And I did question me a lot. But at the same time, I thought, well, I don't care because it's giving me comfort. And I'm feeling very strongly like this is not just a coincidence. So that's good enough for me. And like I said, thank goodness I wrote it down because I really do think that I would have forgotten a lot of the incidents. And in addition to that, I might now second guess it and go, that was, the product of a very tortured mind. But the fact that, in March of last year, a dragonfly shows up in the middle of winter on our outside window on Aaron's birthday and then comes back and, right. And
Yeah.
so I was like, well, I just can't deny this stuff anymore because
Yeah.
it happens too much.
Yes.
And I really do talk in the book about the thought that, we're just really now beginning to understand the tip of the iceberg around quantum mechanics, quantum physics. And when you think even back on laws of thermodynamics, which state energy can neither be created nor destroyed, well, our physical cells maybe go away, but there's an energy that is us. And so I think someday we will find out that, in fact, we do absolutely travel to another realm. And
Yes.
whatever it is, that essence of energy that makes us really lives on. So why not reorganize electronics, birds, insects, sounds, happenstances, and the synchronicities of life? I
Yes.
mean, I just believe it happens too much to all of us for it to be not true. And I'll just finish by saying, science would like us to believe that anything real needs to be repeatable, observable, verifiable. But guess what, guys? We're in an imperfect world, and that just isn't going to happen. And that leaves room for miracles.
Yes, exactly. And they are repeatable. You just have, we don't always see them. And I think that's part
Yes.
of, you're now trained to see them because people are reporting them to you as well. So the book is a lot of other people's experiences as well. And I thought I would share one of my own, if that's okay, because you
I love
mentioned
it. Yeah.
electronics. So when I was first studying with my mentors, electronics was the way to go. And so we would hear stories around the radio, music. Now it's Alexa. Ooh, hopefully nobody has that going on in there. Yeah. Anyway, or there's light bulbs. And so I have tons of stories in my own life about the light bulbs, the lights on the street, the radio, the smells. I don't know if you've had the experiences of the smells, but having
Yes.
that come in, right? So we'll talk about that in a minute. But here was one that was super dramatic. And so, because you all may think, oh, Denise, this is probably no big deal to you. But even I, like Mary, will be like, maybe I should question this, maybe that I'm making this up. But many, many, many years into my own journey, someone who I was very close to passed away. And it was in I think 2012. So, again, it's been a while, but it's still, again, you can feel the energy of that just even speaking. And she and I had done a lot of work together with one of my mentors who was a medium and a psychic. And so she knew she was dying. She lived a long time with a really very, very challenging cancer. But one of the things that I had asked her at one time, I said, if it's not too much trouble, when you go over, if you could just send a sign at some point, because we have that common language, right? I said, but don't worry about it. But because she knew she was dying. So it's not like something you would necessarily say to anyone. Anyway, so she had passed, and I was missing her one day, and I was just tuning in, and the way so again, the way I see is I see and hear, so, and feel. So I see her calling to me, and it looks like she's in the Scottish Highlands, and she's saying to me, I'm really good. Can you hear me? I'm really great. And I was like, even so, you guys are going to laugh because you're thinking, well, of course you heard this, but no, I'm like, is that really happening? So I said to her, okay, if this is really happening, could you send me a sign? Because honestly, we live in this world and we need signs, like physical signs are good. And so so I said that. And then I don't know, within 30 seconds or less, my phone dinged. And this was back when we played Words with Friends. I don't know if any of you've ever played Words with Friends, but this was back when we would play Words with Friends. I swear to you, I looked at my phone and it said, Molly wants to play Words with Friends. And I just lost it because, I mean, it's not possible, right? And it is possible. And it is what happened. And it was real. And that took a lot of energy. Like she brought it from the other side because that took a lot of energy. Not every soul who's on the other side is necessarily going to have that same energy. So we want to look or feel or sense. They can come in our dreams, all the things that are possible. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you because
I
it's
love
one of my
it.
favorite
Yeah,
dramatic stories. I think
really
the
great.
subtle ones are equally as important though. And I would like for you to share some more if you can, to just give us some ideas of how they're showing up and how Aaron has showed up too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. There's many in the book, but one of my very favorites has to do with music.
Mm.
And it was a year to the day of his passing. And Dan and I had decided we're going to do a balloon release. And now I know better. Please don't do balloon releases. Those mylar balloons get in my fields, and
Mm.
animals accidentally ingest them, or they get in the creeks and our waterways. But we didn't know any better. So anyway, we were going to do a balloon release. And that morning, Dan said to me, I'm going to go pick up the balloons. Are you going to be all right? And I said, oh, yeah, yeah, I'm fine, which I really was not. And so I traipsed up to my office and I cried and I talked to Darren and, let myself go to pieces. And I remember very distinctly thinking to Aaron, I really need to feel you near to me today of all days.
Mhm.
And so after I was done with my little come apart, I decided to go downstairs and I thought, I'll get the music queued up and make sure that everyone's going to be able to hear it, the one that we're going to do right when we release the balloons, and get all that ready. And what we were going to play is I Know You're Out There Somewhere by the Moody Blues, which to me was beautiful, perfect, awesome. And so I pull it up on the little, you remember what the old iPad or iThings used to look like.
The
I
iPod
pulled it
stuff.
up,
Yeah.
yeah, and I could see the Moody Blues, I Know You're Out There Somewhere. and I put the speaker in the right place, and I walked about 15 paces away, and I hit play. But that song did not come on. A song I didn't even know was on there came on, the name of which was Near to You.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think we can all feel that. And thank you for sharing that. There's so many times, we don't play radio so much anymore in cars. We usually have whatever connection we have to our phones, and we don't even have iPods really anymore. But that random showing up of a perfectly titled song, that is remarkable and beautiful. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
So, Mary, what do you say to people? And because this happens a lot, I will hear people say, well, I haven't had any signs and I haven't dreamed about my loved one. Um, what thoughts do you have on that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do hear that a lot. Because believe it or not, until very recently, I had never joined a grief group. And as part of my launch plan, and by the way, I'm going to step back and say I have committed 100% of book sale proceeds to go to charity on my own debt. I want to manage whatever money comes in.
Financial person that you are. Yeah.
Person, of course, right? The guy on the back of the book would spank me if I did otherwise. Yeah, so I am donating money, and I go into part of my launch plan was, begin with the small ripples, because I do, when I envision the book, I literally see, how when a stone hits a pond, you see a ripple and then these ever widening concentric circles. And so in my vision, that's what I want the book to do, is ripple out into the hands and the of people that can use its messages and find comfort, hope, peace, and love. But I thought, well, begin small with the stones more near, my friends, my family. And now I'm in the most difficult phase of the launch, which is I'm talking to strangers that have no reason to like me, believe me, want me, whatever. And so one of the things that I've been doing is joining grief groups on Facebook, interacting a little bit with people, but mentioning the book. And what's really interesting is many of them are like, oh, thank you so much. And a lot of people say, I'm moved to get the book. And then they write to me about it and talk to me about it, etc. And then there's a few that are like, no promotions, and they're really ugly kind of about it, which is so weird to me, but whatever. But what I always say to people is, I think that even just reading other people's stories about this, and I've got such a wide range of them in there, that something's bound to resonate, and just let that rest with you. And the other thing I always say to people is, well, watch, because we kind of unlearn the truth when we come into this earthly life. And we come in knowing all kinds of beautiful truths, but slowly with, the things our parents, our teachers, the books, and, media tell us, we unlearn a lot. And so I just say, slow down and watch and ask your loved one, show me, make it apparent to me. And so I think take comfort from others, look for your own signs, ask for your own signs, and just be open, and be all right with it if it doesn't happen ever or immediately, but just be all right with it. My husband's being really loud right now. Okay, sorry. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, and the continuing to ask the question. Please show me, please show me, please
Yeah.
show me.
Mhm,
So, so important.
mhm,
There's so much of the realms that we're very connected to them, I think, when we're born, for sure.
mhm.
Obviously, we're just coming from another realm. And so hello, little ones.
That's
So
another
we're,
one, yeah.
yeah, yeah, they're very happy. They love this kind of energy,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
animals love to talk about this. They're like,
yes, yeah,
hello, you're in our realms.
that's
Um,
right. That's
yeah, yeah.
exactly right.
So, but as we go through life, it is, unless we have the freedom to explore it, there isn't much support. Although I would say maybe more now than there was when we were growing
Mhm,
up. And so, but the idea is to ask and to continue to listen and watch. And I will say about journaling also, um, that journaling opens that up. Now, I'm an old-fashioned journaler with the hand because partly because of just, it gets the movement in the body, but any kind of journaling, just opening up and continuing to write. And I always say to people, if words come through that don't feel like your words, write them down.
mhm.
Never know what might pop through in a journaling even. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You remember an entry in the book where I was at Equinunction, which I believe is a very sacred place in North Carolina. And the woman there doesn't necessarily do grief therapy,
Right.
but I guess it resonated with her when I asked, can you work with me? Can I come be the only one on your property for an entire weekend? Like, I totally imposed myself on her. But there again, that's spirit, that's energy, because I felt led there. And my heart, even then, was in a place where if she felt it, then it was going to happen and it was going to be right. And oh boy, was it right.
Yeah.
And for, that whole weekend, it was like I was in another world. I mean, I visited what I believe is a past life. But one of the, I guess, little mini episodes is she had me write, and she actually had me write left-handed
Right.
and in my journal, and some amazing things began coming out, for me that
Yeah.
really resonated when
Yes.
I did that.
Yeah, the non-dominant hand writing is
Mhm.
its own, I mean, that is just an
Yeah.
amazing experience too. So
Mhm.
you really you threw yourself into all the possibilities.
Yeah, I guess I
Um,
did.
you really have. And um, one of and again, there's a lot in this book. And again, it's I think it's one of those books, and I want to ask you this because you're going to know better than I will. I have a grief book that called Honoring Grief that was written by one of my therapists and teachers, and I love it. And I will give that to people just as sometimes I give it to them proactively, and then they're like, "Why are you giving me this?" But I'm just like, well, because everyone should probably have a copy of it. With your book, I was thinking, how would it have felt? And this is because one of our beautiful listeners today just wrote in the chat that she wished your book had been available a while back for one of the deaths that she had experienced. But how would you feel if someone if it had given you a book like this? How would that have felt? And when is a good time to gift someone with a book like this?
Mhm. Yeah, what's shooting through my body or my spirit right now is you send it to somebody when you feel led to send it to somebody.
So when the nudge
Because
comes through.
when you're led, yes.
Yeah,
And I would also say for you, if you are a receiver of it, you open it up when you feel like opening it up.
that's beautiful. And that's actually a great way to, when that feeling arises, if I'm going to send someone the book, I can include that in a card that says,
Mhm.
please only open this when you feel compelled to do so.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a great way to handle that. I really
Well, and you
appreciate.
know what? A lot of people have said to me, at the beginning, because I really do need to set the stage for what happened.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's a rough few first
It's
pages.
hard. Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
I cry every time I read it.
Yeah.
And
So
that was
yes, we should tell people that it is.
yeah.
Yeah, I cried. I
But
cried. Yes.
what I also know is that when you get on in the book, you are gonna smile, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna laugh.
Yes. All of the
And
above. Yeah.
ultimately, I think you come out the other side of having read it possessing, literally possessing
Yeah.
more peace, more hope, and
Yes.
comfort. And I don't know, even maybe just a little more strength for
Mhm.
the journey ahead.
Yes, and again, what something that was said at the very beginning from one of our wise listeners and watchers is people, this is uncomfortable. People are particularly in certain cultures, mine being one of them, we don't live with death in the same way. Now, I will say a lot of people out there who own ranches and are farms and are working with animals, there's a little bit more understanding, I think, of the cycle of life and death. But for those urbanized people like myself, even though this is a world that I'm in all the time, the actual living with death and moving through death is not easy. So I wanted to find out if you'd be willing to share. Now, granted, I know there's some transition here, but could you share with everyone what you and your husband were nudged to do at some point during the journey around being around death? And this
Yeah, yeah.
was pretty cool, I have to say.
Yeah, like talk about leaning in. And so I'll say we were led to lean into this experience. And that doesn't mean that I think people who curl up in a ball and run as far away from it
Yeah.
as possible are wrong. I don't think that at all. I think people should do what they feel like doing when they feel like doing it.
Yeah,
Clear,
exactly.
that's on the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you guys may remember that 2008 we had a meltdown in the markets, and I could even talk about why it happened, but we won't go off into that tangent.
Ooh.
Uh, but it was still raw in
Yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
And back then, I was working at Bank of America in financial services on the investment side of the house. And my husband was building houses. And
Mhm.
what we were doing is buying large pieces of land. I mean, they were large to us, like 30 acres,
Mhm.
and putting houses that were custom built on them with acreage so that people could have purposes. And things were going well, but all of a sudden we were like, I don't think we need to be buying another tract of land right now. And we're going to cross fingers that everything that's under contract continues, that we don't go belly up. And so luckily it all went well, but we were like, what should we do now? And we just felt like, well, we love the land. We love honoring the land, in sustainable ways and in ways that, aren't violating the earth. And we started thinking, we should buy a cemetery or build one. And one fell into our laps, a 30-acre cemetery 5 minutes from where we live that we kind of really didn't even know existed. And that led to ultimately building a funeral home on the middle of the property. It's a beautiful property. We had left half of it in woods and, it's just gorgeous back there. The deer get to live there and the people get to live there, after them, their bodies.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and then ultimately Dan became a funeral director. And then in 2020, as the tributaries of my life would flow, I left financial services, and I knew he would say, hey, why don't you come to work in the business? We were literally just getting ready to open the doors of the funeral home. And he did. It took like 7 minutes after I told him that I was being packaged out at my own request. And I said, yeah, I've thought about that, and I'll help with marketing and, getting the interior design work done. But then as I began spending day after day in there, meeting the people, working with them, I'm like, well, here we go. I'm going back to school. I'm going to be a funeral director. And so now I am. And, it's honestly, it's a privilege helping people at a time in their life when they're upside down, they're vulnerable. And I just love the sales process because for me, it's about honoring them and their wishes and not about slamming them into products that they don't want or need. It's about doing it their way, whether it's that big of a contract or that big of a contract. I just want them to have what they need, what they want, what makes them feel good. And at the end of the day, we walk out with a very good conscience about it.
Yeah, I wish more people were like that. That's
I do
just
too. Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know about all of you, but I mean, I knew this already, and but I was just getting chills everywhere because being led, I mean, there's just no way you could have ever put that. You would not have probably put that on a list of goals for your lifetime,
Right. Right.
but to be able to listen so deeply, again, really a very powerful testament to both of you, for you and Dan, just being able to connect with a greater purpose in this. And I think one of there's several stories, but there's each one of them, as I read through, when you're helping people who are moving through that initial phase, right? Like right afterwards. There's so many decisions that have to be made. And it's just a really rough go. And, if anyone out there hasn't been, and I know people have to drop off at the top of the hour, but we're going to go a little longer just because we're going to, but we know you have to go. If anyone out there needs, some support, practical support, about decisions and all of that, is there something that you have for people that, or have you written something new yet for this part?
No, I have not. But for those of you listening, I'm more than happy to dialogue with you. I answer everyone that reaches out to me. You can look on my webpage and get to me that way. You can make friends with me on Facebook, just whatever. And I answer everyone.
Good. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
I will say that, I've had a lot of deaths in my life. It turns out, you just, again, it's not something we necessarily think about, but when when my father passed, he had been a military person early on, and the USAA, which is a company, it's, I think it's a financial company actually.
Right.
Um, they sent me a whole bunch of booklets,
Mhm.
and I still have them because the practical pieces are really helpful. And kind of dialing back into something else that you mentioned at the very beginning, one of the first things they say in the booklet is, please take care of yourself because it's very easy to get sick or have an accident yourself
Yeah.
when you're grieving. And, I always want to share that with people because we go a lot on autopilot, and autopilot means that a lot of times we are not as fully in our bodies as we really need to be, and under any kind of stress, but death in particular seems to, um, amplify, I think, that
Yeah.
experience quite a
Yeah,
bit.
I
So,
agree. I do
yeah.
agree with that. And you're vulnerable emotionally, you're vulnerable mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a three-way
Yeah.
um rotten trifecta.
Yeah, exactly. So, as we move into just the last few minutes of our conversation, one of the things that comes up in the book, and I want to encourage, everyone who's listening, to maybe consider when this has happened for you, that nature brings us a lot of signs. You mentioned the dragonfly. There's also feathers. Feathers seem to show up a lot. Do you want to
Yeah.
speak a little bit more to some of those signs?
Yeah, that was actually one of my other favorite stories of many. When my brother died a few years ago, I went up north. I'm from Wisconsin, and we traveled up there. I actually got to be with him right before he died. Um, and, although mentally he didn't look like he was around, I know that he knew, because I do believe when we're transitioning, we've already got one leg over on the other side, and we can see and know what's going on as we leave. And there's some decisioning going on, I think, as well when we leave.
Yes.
But at any rate, my sister-in-law, his wife, who I feel like I've known all my life. I think I was 7 years old when they got together. They were lovely, had been lovely soulmates in this life. And she was, of course, sad, but she possesses sort of that Midwestern stoicism.
Yeah.
And you don't emote, and you don't
Yes.
and we were together a lot, planning funeral and all that kind of thing. And at one point I said to her name was Beverly, I said, Beverly, has he let you know yet that he's arrived on the other side? And have you seen any signs? And she goes, oh, nah, I don't think I believe in anything like that. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, just keep your eyes open because you might be surprised. And I said, I'm going to be watching. And it was not the very next morning that, we would leave and go have coffee downtown. And we were sitting outside one day, and all of a sudden, literally out of nowhere, I didn't even see a bird fly over, but this giant, beautiful feather was spiraling down out of the air, and it landed on my knee. And I'm like, well, okay, so he's saying this is a sign from him.
Yeah.
And he was, very big hunter, but, from a conservationist perspective, he
Yeah.
loved animals. And although he was a hunter, there was this beautiful balance
Yeah.
for him. And so, not surprising, there it was. So I was real excited. I went back and I said, Bev, I think it's time for us as a feather. You should watch, you should watch. And so couple days later, we had the funeral, and the whole family came back. We were all sitting outside, and literally a little pretty feather floated down again out from the air and landed on Bev. And she said, what is this? What is happening? And I said, if it were me, I would pick that up right now and go put it in the box that you're going to save for him. And so she was just blown away. And then later on, I asked her months later, hey, have you seen any other signs? And she said, well, he comes and sits on my bed every night. And she
Oh,
says she
wow.
literally feels an impression of the bed
Nice.
down, and she
Oh,
knows in her heart
yeah.
that he's there.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love that. And I think that's such a beautiful story to kind of come to a conclusion with for today. We'll have you back on later in the year so you can share more, but I really recommend everybody buy the book. And again, maybe I always say this, buy a copy for yourself, buy a copy for a friend, or buy a copy to donate to the library. I think that, having access to books, for other people too is a good idea. Um, You
And
know,
leave a review for me on
oh, and leave a
Amazon.
review. Yes, I need to do that.
Because,
Yes, leave a
yeah, they will
review.
promote the book more, and that
Okay.
only means more readers will be exposed to it.
Okay, yes, there is a business side apparently to this whole thing too. You
Yeah,
have to know how to
yeah.
play
Little
the
did I know.
author game now. So
Right, right.
yeah, so I think again, this is a tender but also beautiful, beautiful subject to begin our week and deepen into the journey we're all on this lifetime and the unexpected experiences that throw us into a huge amount of growth. And then I want to just thank you for writing the book. I'm so, again, just being tracking for many, many years your stories and stories of other people. It's really helpful. And thank you so much for being here
Well,
today.
thank you. It was an honor.
Oh, such a great. Well, thank you. And I'm just going to thank everyone who's listening and watching. What an incredible experience to have the container set for this very deep and powerful conversation. So thank you.